The room was silent, but not calm. Dozens of people sat in front of glowing screens. Some screens showed numbers. Some showed lines moving up and down. Others showed the image of a giant machine standing on a launch pad. No one was smiling. No one was relaxed. This was launch day. Outside, the Space Shuttle stood tall against the dark sky. It was bigger than most buildings. It looked quiet, but inside it was full of danger. Fuel tanks were filled. Engines were ready. Fire was waiting. Inside the control room, one man held a phone in his hand. His name did not matter. His job did. He was responsible for one thing only: safety. The countdown clock was running, T-minus 45 minutes. Every second felt heavy. Engineers checked systems again and again. They had checked them hundreds of times before. Still, they checked again, because one small mistake could kill everyone on board. The astronauts were already inside the shuttle. They were sitting on top of millions of liters of fuel. They knew the risk. They always knew, but knowing did not remove fear. It only made it quieter. The man with the phone looked at one screen again. A small number was blinking. It should not blink. His heart started to beat faster. "Check this reading," he said calmly. His voice did not show fear, but his eyes did. Another engineer leaned closer to the screen. He frowned. "That sensor should be stable," he said. But it was not. The blinking continued. T-minus 38 minutes. The control room became tense. People stopped talking. Fingers moved faster on keyboards. Someone wiped sweat from their forehead. The man with the phone felt something was wrong. Very wrong. This was not the first launch. Space shuttles had launched before, but space never became safe. It only became familiar. And familiar danger was still danger. He picked up the phone. This was the desperate call. On the other side of the phone was another team, far from the launch pad. They were experts. They knew the systems deeply. If anyone could explain the blinking number, it was them. The phone rang, once, twice. Finally, someone answered. "Yes," a tired voice said. "We have a problem," the man said. He spoke slowly, clearly. "One of the readings is unstable." "Which system?" the voice asked. "Fuel pressure near the main engine line." There was silence on the line. That silence was worse than shouting. T-minus 31 minutes. The experts began to talk fast. They asked questions. They gave short answers. They asked for more data. Numbers were sent. Screens changed. The astronauts inside the shuttle knew nothing about the phone call. They were trained to wait. They listened to their own breathing. They felt the vibration of machines around them. One astronaut closed his eyes. He thought about Earth, about gravity, about how easy it was to stand on the ground. Soon, if all went well, that feeling would be gone, or worse, everything would be gone. Back in the control room, the blinking number stopped. For 3 seconds, then it started again, T-minus 25 minutes. "This should not happen," one engineer whispered. The man with the phone felt a cold feeling in his stomach. If this was a real problem, the launch must stop. But stopping a launch was not simple. It cost money. Missions? It disappointed millions of people watching on TV, but none of that mattered if people died. He asked the hardest question. "Is it safe to continue?" No one answered immediately. The experts argued quietly. One said it could be a sensor error. Another said it could be real. A third said they needed more time. Time was something they did not have. T-minus 18 minutes. Outside, the shuttle stood silent. It looked peaceful. But inside, pressure was building. Fuel flowed through pipes. Systems were waking up. The machine was slowly coming alive. Inside the shuttle, an astronaut heard the voice from mission control. "Status check," the voice said. "Crew ready," the astronaut replied. They were ready, ready to fly, ready to risk everything. But was the shuttle ready? The man with the phone looked at the countdown clock. He had to decide soon. Very soon, T-minus 12 minutes. The blinking number changed again. It dropped slightly. One expert spoke on the phone. "It is still within limits," he said, "but barely." "Barely is not good enough," the man replied. Everyone waited. T-minus 9 minutes. The final systems would soon take control. After that, humans could not stop the launch easily. Machines would decide. The man took a deep breath. He looked around the room. He saw fear. He saw responsibility. He saw history watching them. This call could save lives or delay a dream. He spoke clearly into the phone. "I need your final answer." The line went silent again, and the countdown continued. T-minus 7 minutes. The answer was coming, and whatever it was, nothing would ever be the same after it. The silence on the phone did not break. It grew heavier. The man in the control room felt his hands tighten. The countdown clock did not care about fear. It did not care about doubt. It kept moving. T-minus 6 minutes. Outside, lights around the launch pad shone bright. The space shuttle stood still, but deep inside, machines were waking up fully now. Valves opened. Pumps started to spin. Fuel rushed through metal veins like blood. This was the moment engineers feared the most. In the control room, a soft alarm beeped. Not loud, not urgent, but enough to remind everyone that time was slipping away. Finally, the voice on the phone returned. We believe, the expert said slowly. The sensor may be giving false data. May, the man asked. Yes, May, that word was dangerous. False data meant the problem was not real. But if it was real and they ignored it, the result would be fire, explosion, death, T-5 minutes. The man looked at another screen. It showed the astronauts inside the shuttle. They were strapped in tightly. They could not move much. They trusted the people in this room with their lives. One astronaut smiled slightly. Cameras caught it. Millions of people would later see that smile and call it brave. But bravery did not stop explosions. The man turned back to the phone. If we stop now, he said, can we find the real cause? Yes, the expert replied, but it will take days, maybe weeks, days or lives, T-4 minutes. The launch director's voice filled the room. Prepare for final status check. One by one, teams reported. Navigation is go. Engines are. Fuel systems are go. The man hesitated. When his turn came, his mouth felt dry. Safety? The director asked. All eyes turned to him. This was the point of no return. He thought about past launches, about accidents, about warnings that were ignored. Space history was full of lessons written in fire. He thought about the blinking number, T-3 minutes. He spoke carefully. Safety is go, he said. The word echoed in the room. The decision was made. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts felt a change. The machine around them seemed more alive. Vibrations grew stronger. The sound was deeper now. One astronaut whispered, here we go. T-2 minutes. On the launch pad, white clouds of vapor flowed around the shuttle. It looked like it was breathing. The engines were almost ready to start. At this stage, stopping the launch would be nearly impossible. The man with the phone placed it down slowly. There was nothing more he could do now. Control was leaving human hands. T-1 minute. The final computer systems took control. Machines began talking to machines faster than any human could think. The astronauts heard the automated voice. T-30 seconds. Their hearts beat faster. Their bodies were still, but their minds raced. On Earth, gravity waited. T-10 seconds. The control room stood frozen. 10, 9, 8. The man stared at the screen. The blinking number was gone now. Either the problem fixed itself or it was hiding. 7, 6. Inside the shuttle, fuel igniters sparked. 5, 4. The engines began to roar slowly at first. 3. The sound grew louder than thunder. The ground shook. 2. The engines reached full power. The shuttle strained against its restraints like a wild animal. 1. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then fire exploded beneath the shuttle. The restraints released. The space shuttle began to rise, slowly, powerfully. The control room erupted in controlled noise. People spoke fast. Data streamed in. Screens changed rapidly. It has cleared the tower, someone said, but no one relaxed. The first seconds were the most dangerous. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts felt a crushing force push them into their seats. Their bodies felt heavy. Very heavy. The Earth tried to hold them. The engines screamed louder. Back in the control room, the man watched the altitude numbers climb. He knew something important. If the problem was real, it would show itself now. 10 seconds into flight. 20. The shuttle climbed higher, wrapped in fire and smoke. The blinking number did not return. But danger was not gone, because the most violent moment was still ahead, and the shuttle was flying straight toward it. The space shuttle was in the air, but it was not safe. Not yet. The first 8 seconds after liftoff were the most dangerous seconds of the entire launch. Engineers called this moment the nightmare window. If something failed now, there was no escape. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts could feel everything. The vibration was violent. It felt like sitting inside a giant shaking drum. Their helmets rattled slightly. Their voices sounded strange in their ears. One astronaut tried to speak. His words came out slow and heavy. The force pressed him hard into his seat. Below them, fire pushed the shuttle upward. The engines burned fuel faster than any machine on Earth. Every second, thousands of liters of fuel vanished into pure power. In the control room, no one spoke. All eyes were on the screens. Speed, altitude, pressure. Numbers moved too fast to follow easily. Roll program started, a calm voice announced. The shuttle began to turn. This was the moment that scared new engineers the most. Instead of flying straight up, the shuttle tilted to the side. To anyone watching, it looked wrong. It looked like a mistake, but it was planned. The shuttle had to turn to point toward its path around Earth. Space was not above, it was around. Still, if the turn went wrong, the shuttle would fall back or tear itself apart. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts felt the shift. Their bodies pressed sideways now. One of them clenched his jaw. Training helped, but fear was still there. Back in the control room, the man who made the safety call watched closely. His heart pounded in his chest. He remembered every warning, every test, every failure from the past. T+6 seconds. The engines were at full power. The solid rocket boosters were burning like controlled bombs. They could not be turned off. They would burn until they were empty. There was no undo button. Suddenly, a warning light blinked on one screen, only for a moment. Then it disappeared. "Confirm that," someone said quickly. "Reading is normal," another replied. The room breathed again, T+8 seconds. The shuttle was still climbing, still alive, but Earth was not done fighting back. As the shuttle climbed higher, the air around it became thinner. The pressure outside dropped. Inside the engines, power remained extreme. This difference created stress. Invisible hands pulled at the shuttle from all sides. Engineers watched for a moment called max Q, maximum pressure. This was when the shuttle felt the strongest force of air pushing against it while moving at high speed. If the shuttle could survive max Q, chances of success would rise. But they were not there yet. Inside the shuttle, the shaking changed. It became faster, sharper. One astronaut's chest felt tight. Breathing took more effort. "Vehicle is responding normally," Mission Control said. The words sounded calm, but everyone knew how thin the line was. T+30 seconds. The shuttle was moving faster than a bullet. The ground below looked smaller. Clouds slipped past quickly. Fire still followed it like a tail. The man in the control room noticed something else now. The blinking number, it returned, for half a second, then it vanished again. His stomach dropped. "Did anyone see that?" he asked. A few heads nodded. "Log it," someone said. "Monitor closely." There was nothing else they could do. Stopping the launch now was impossible. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts did not know about the blinking number. They focused on staying calm, on trusting the machine, on trusting the people below. T+45 seconds. The shuttle pushed harder. Engines adjusted power slightly to protect the structure. Computers made decisions faster than humans ever could. This was the handover point. From now on, machines led the way. The control room became observers. T+60 seconds. The shuttle approached max Q. Every bolt, every panel, every line was under stress. If something was weak, this was when it would fail. The man held his breath. Everyone did. Then a voice cut through the room. "Max Q." A short pause. "Vehicle is through max Q." Relief washed over the room like a quiet wave. No cheering, no smiles, just survival. Inside the shuttle, the shaking eased slightly. The astronauts felt it too. The worst pressure had passed. But danger was not over, because soon, something explosive would happen on purpose. And if it went wrong, the sky itself would turn against them. The shaking slowly changed. It did not stop. It transformed. Inside the space shuttle, the astronauts felt a new kind of force. The pressure was still strong, but now it was smoother, like riding a powerful wave that could break at any moment. Outside, the solid rocket boosters were burning wildly. They were the most dangerous part of the launch. Once they were ignited, they could not be turned off. Not by humans, not by computers. They were pure fire with a timer. Inside the control room, engineers watched the booster data closely. Burn rate, direction, stability. If one booster failed, the shuttle would spin out of control. There would be no rescue. T+90 seconds. The boosters were still burning. Flames poured out behind them, brighter than the sun. Smoke stretched across the sky like a giant scar. Inside the shuttle, one astronaut felt his vision narrow. The force pressed his body deep into the seat. His arms felt heavy. Moving even a finger was hard. "Stay focused," he told himself. This was not fear, this was survival. The shuttle climbed higher. The sky began to change color. Blue slowly faded toward black. On one screen in the control room, a line suddenly jumped. A fuel pressure line. The same system as before. The man noticed it instantly. "Check that channel," he said sharply. Hands moved fast. Numbers refreshed. The line returned to normal. Again, the problem was playing games. T+110 seconds. The boosters were almost empty now. Engineers waited for the next planned explosion. Booster separation. This was one of the most violent moments of the launch. Small explosive charges would fire. The boosters would detach. If they did not separate cleanly, they could crash into the shuttle. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts prepared. They had trained for this moment. Still, training could not fully prepare the body. A calm computer voice filled the cabin. "Booster separation in 5, 4, the astronaut stopped breathing. 3, the man in the control room leaned forward. 2, every system watched itself. 1, a sudden air like a massive kick. The shuttle jolted violently. Outside, the solid rocket boosters broke away, spinning backward, falling toward Earth in a trail of fire and smoke. For a split second, the shuttle felt lighter, then heavier again. The main engines now carried the full load. Inside the shuttle, one astronaut let out a short breath. It was not relief. Not yet. Back in the control room, confirmation lights turned green. "Boosters separated," a voice said. The first irreversible danger was gone, but another one waited. Without the boosters, the shuttle relied only on liquid engines. These engines were powerful but fragile. Unlike the boosters, they could be shut down, but if they shut down too early, the shuttle would fall back to Earth like a stone. T plus 2 minutes 30 seconds. The blinking number appeared again. This time it stayed. Pressure is dropping, an engineer said. How fast? The man asked. Slow but steady. Silence returned to the room. This was worse than a sudden failure. Slow problems gave hope and fear. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts felt something change. The push against their bodies softened slightly. Too early. One astronaut looked at another. Their eyes met. They both felt it. Engines adjusting, mission control said. The computers reacted. Valves moved. Fuel flow changed. The pressure stabilized. The blinking number disappeared again. The man exhaled slowly. His shirt was damp with sweat. T plus 4 minutes. Earth was far below now. The curve of the planet was visible. The sky was almost completely black. The shuttle was no longer fighting air. Now it was fighting gravity alone. This was the final test. If the engines failed now, the shuttle would not explode. It would fall, fast and far. Inside the shuttle, weight slowly began to fade. Not fully gone, but changing. Strange, unfamiliar. One astronaut smiled inside his helmet, but he did not celebrate, because the hardest question was still unanswered. Would the engines last long enough? Or would this flight end before space ever truly began? The space shuttle was no longer surrounded by fire. The sound changed again. Inside the shuttle, the loud shaking slowly faded into a deep, steady roar. It was still powerful, but now it felt distant, like thunder far away. This silence was dangerous. Many people thought explosions were the greatest threat, but in spaceflight, quiet problems were often worse. Inside the control room, engineers leaned closer to their screens. The data now moved in smooth lines. Too smooth, T plus 5 minutes. The shuttle was very high above Earth. The sky outside was black, but the planet below was bright and blue. Thin clouds looked like white paint on a giant sphere. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts felt strange. Their bodies were heavy one moment, then lighter the next. Gravity was losing its grip. One astronaut lifted his hand slightly. It felt slow, like moving underwater. We are riding the edge, he thought. This was not space yet, this was the border. Back on Earth, the man who made the safety call watched the fuel numbers carefully. The engines had only one job now: to burn long enough. Not too fast, not too slow. If fuel burned too fast, the shuttle could tear apart. If it burned too slow, the shuttle would never reach orbit. There was no second chance. T plus 6 minutes. The engines glowed white-hot. Inside them, fuel and oxygen mixed perfectly. A tiny mistake here would shut everything down. Computers adjusted engine power again. Slightly lower now. Throttle down, mission control announced. This was planned. The shuttle did not need full power anymore. It needed control. Inside the shuttle, the push against the astronauts softened more. Their chests felt lighter. Breathing became easier. One astronaut felt his feet barely touching the floor. He smiled again, but carefully. Sudden joy could turn into sudden panic. T plus 7 minutes, then something unexpected happened. A small vibration returned, not violent, not loud, just wrong. The man noticed it first. Do you see that oscillation? He asked. Yes, an engineer replied, very small. Small was still dangerous. Tiny vibrations could grow, they could shake fuel lines, they could confuse sensors. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts felt it too, a soft shaking, like a distant engine running unevenly. Engine performance still nominal, mission control said. The words were calm, but the room was not. T plus 7 minutes 30 seconds. The vibration increased slightly. Computers reacted. They adjusted engine timing. The shaking reduced, but the man knew something. The shuttle was reaching the final moment. Main engine cut off. If the engines shut down at the right second, the shuttle would fall forward into orbit. If they shut down too early or too late, the shuttle would fall back to Earth. There was no pilot control here, only timing. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts waited. Talking stopped. They listened to the machine. One astronaut counted silently in his head. Back in the control room, the countdown now moved upward instead of down. T plus 8 minutes. Fuel levels dropped fast. The engines were almost done. The Earth below moved quickly now, sliding sideways instead of down. That was a good sign. T plus 8 minutes 20 seconds. The man stared at the screen. Stand by for MECO, mission control said. Main engine cut off. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts braced. They did not know exactly when it would happen, then the roar stopped. Suddenly, complete silence. The force vanished. Everything floated. Pens, checklists, arms, legs. The astronauts gasped. They were weightless. For half a second, no one spoke. Then mission control's voice returned. Main engine cutoff confirmed. The shuttle was flying free, not falling, not climbing, orbiting. The man leaned back in his chair. His hands shook slightly. He did not hide it. They had crossed the edge. But the journey was not over, because now the shuttle was alone. And space is a place that forgives nothing. Silence filled the shuttle, not the calm silence of Earth. This silence was deep, empty, endless. The engines were off. the fire was gone. The space shuttle was now flying around Earth at unbelievable speed. It was not supported by power anymore, it was supported by balance. Inside the shuttle, everything floated. A checklist drifted slowly in the air. A pen spun gently. The astronauts looked at each other, amazed even after years of training. They had reached space, but space did not welcome them. It ignored them. Back on Earth, the control room slowly relaxed. People spoke again. Chairs creaked. Some engineers finally leaned back, but no one celebrated loudly. They all knew the truth. Reaching orbit was only half the battle, T plus 10 minutes. The shuttle moved fast, very fast, faster than any bullet, faster than sound. One small mistake at this speed could be deadly. The astronauts began post-launch checks. Simple movements were now difficult. Their bodies floated when they did not want them to. Training helped, but the feeling was strange. One astronaut pushed too hard and drifted into a wall. He laughed softly. That laugh released tension. For the first time since launch, they felt human again. Outside the window, Earth passed below. Blue oceans, white clouds, thin land lines, no borders, no sound, just beauty. But beauty could distract. Mission control reminded them, begin orbital checks. The shuttle was safe only if everything worked perfectly. Inside the control room, the man watched fuel data again. The blinking number did not return. That worried him more than comforted him. Problems in space did not always appear immediately. Some waited, T plus 20 minutes. The shuttle prepared to open its cargo bay doors. This was necessary. Without opening them, heat could build up and destroy systems. But opening doors in space was risky. If they failed to open or failed to close later, the shuttle could never return home. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts worked carefully. Command sent, one said. Motors began to move slowly, too slowly. The man leaned forward. Confirm movement, he said. Doors are opening, mission control replied. The astronauts watched as sunlight spilled into the bay. Metal glowed softly. The doors locked into place. Green lights appeared. Safe for now, T plus 40 minutes. The shuttle was officially in orbit. Earth below moved like a living painting. The sun rose quickly, then disappeared just as fast. Day and night passed in minutes. Inside the shuttle, time felt broken. The astronauts removed their helmets. Sweat floated away in tiny drops. They wiped their faces and smiled. They had survived launch, but survival was not victory. Space missions were full of quiet danger. One loose screw, one frozen valve, one wrong calculation. Any of these could turn success into tragedy. The man in the control room stood up. He stretched his back. His body felt heavy now that the pressure was gone. He looked at the screen showing the shuttle orbiting Earth. So small, so fragile, so far away, he knew something important. Every launch told the same story. Fire, fear, silence, humans fighting physics, and for a moment winning, but space never forgets, and it never forgives. The shuttle drifted on, alone above the world. And the question was no longer did they launch. The question now was, will they come back? Orbit felt peaceful, too peaceful. The space shuttle moved around Earth again and again. Every 90 minutes the sun rose and set. Day turned into night in silence. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts floated like they belonged there. But they did not. They were visitors, and visitors must leave. Back on Earth, the control room planned the most dangerous part of the mission. Coming home, many people believed launch was the hardest moment. They were wrong. Re-entry had no engines, no second chances, and no escape. The shuttle could not simply slow down and land. It had to fall, in a very exact way, T plus several days. The mission was complete. Experiments were done. Data was collected. It was time to return. The man in the control room watched the landing plans. The margin for error was thin, very thin, too steep and the shuttle would burn like a meteor. Too shallow and it would bounce off the atmosphere and drift into space forever. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts prepared. Loose items were secured, seats were adjusted. Helmets were worn again. The feeling of weightlessness would soon disappear. The shuttle turned slowly in space. This turn was critical. To come home, it had to face backward. Then the engines fired, not forward, backward. The burn lasted only a few minutes, but it changed everything. The shuttle was no longer staying in orbit. It was falling. The engines stopped. Silence returned. There was no turning back now. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts felt nothing at first. Still floating, still calm. But below them, the atmosphere waited, thin at first, then thicker, then deadly. Back on Earth, the control room grew quiet again. Very quiet. Everyone knew the rule. No communication during the hottest part. If something went wrong, no one would know until it was too late. The shuttle entered the upper atmosphere. Outside, air slammed into its surface at extreme speed. Heat rose instantly. Temperature climbed higher than molten lava. Plasma formed around the shuttle. Fire wrapped around it like a shell. Inside, the astronauts felt shaking return. Soft at first, then stronger. Gravity came back slowly. Their arms felt heavy. Their chests felt tight. One astronaut breathed deeply, slowly. "Stay calm," he told himself. The heat shield took the pain. Tile by tile, it absorbed fire meant to destroy the shuttle. If even one tile failed, no one finished that thought. The shuttle glowed bright orange in the sky. From the ground, it looked like a falling star. Minutes passed. No signal, no voice. The man stared at the clock. This was the longest silence of the mission. Then a crackle, a voice. "Houston, we have signal." The control room exhaled as one. The worst heat was over. The shuttle slowed. Fire faded. Air became air again. The wings began to work. The shuttle was no longer a spaceship. It was now a glider, a very heavy one. Inside the shuttle, the astronauts felt full gravity again. Their bodies were tired, heavy, alive. The Earth rushed up to meet them. The runway appeared ahead. No engines. No second try, just one landing. The shuttle touched down. Wheels screamed. Sparks flew, then stillness. It was over. The man closed his eyes for a moment. Another journey completed. Another story of humans challenging the impossible. They had left Earth on fire. They returned on silence. And for now, they had won. The runway was quiet. The space shuttle stood still, resting on Earth again. Its body was dark and scarred. Burn marks covered its surface like memories written in ash. It looked tired. Inside, the astronauts sat silently for a moment. Gravity felt strange now. Their arms felt heavy. Their heads felt slow. Space had changed them. They had left Earth as humans. They returned as survivors. Outside, people waited. Engineers, doctors, cameras. Applause was ready. History was already being written. But inside the shuttle, there was no cheering, only breathing, slow, deep, real. The hatch opened. Fresh air entered the cabin. Earth air, thick, heavy, safe. One astronaut smiled as he felt it. He had missed this more than he realized. Step by step, they exited the shuttle. Their legs shook. Gravity reminded them who was in control. Back in the control room, the man watched the final images. The mission was marked successful. A simple word, successful, but he knew the truth. Success in space always came with a price. He looked at the shuttle again. He remembered the blinking number, the desperate call, the silence before liftoff, the fire, the fear. This mission survived. Others did not. Space did not care about effort. It did not care about courage. It did not care about dreams. It only respected precision. Years later, the space shuttle program would end. No more launches. No more fire rising from the same pads. No more shuttles riding controlled explosions into the sky. People would ask, was it worth it? The answer was not simple. The shuttle carried satellites, built space stations, changed science, changed how humans saw Earth. It also carried risk and loss. Every launch was a question asked to the universe. Can we go farther? Sometimes the universe answered yes. Sometimes it stayed silent. The man stood up and turned off his screen. Another mission finished. Another story closed, but the question remained. It always would. Because as long as humans looked at the stars, they would want to touch them. Even if it meant fire, even if it meant fear, even if it meant trusting a machine with their lives. The space shuttle was never just a vehicle. It was a challenge, a promise, a warning, and a reminder that space is not conquered, it is only visited. For a short time. And every time humans return safely, it is not because space allowed it. It is because everything went right. And next time, there are no guarantees.